Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, and welcome to my October reading wrap-up. In this month, I did read 10 books, which for me is pretty average. I am in school right now, and I feel like I have a test every single week. So I honestly, even though I've read a good amount, I definitely don't have as much time to read as I normally would. I do read mostly physical books, and that's generally what I prefer, but I did read, I think, just one of them through Audible, so it was an audiobook. I still technically count that as a book consumed. I know there's like a whole big debate about that. Do I consider it like reading? Not necessarily, but I still think that you have the exact same ability to rate and like recommend or tell your thoughts on it. But I don't think necessarily listening to the audiobooks is reading, because reading is reading, but I don't have any like judgment against it, if that makes sense. Anyways, let's get right into it. And by the way, we're not going to go in any particular order. I just wrote them down from basically like memory, so it might be a little bit all over the place, like if you've seen any of my reading vlogs from this month, which I think most of them are in, but yeah. So one of the first books that I read this month was The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. I really like that book. It talks about grief. It talks about kind of just owning your childhood and becoming more okay with who you are, honestly. I preferred the 7-Year Slip over this one, but I did still really like it. It was a 4 stars. It wasn't my absolute favorite. It did get a little bit slow in the middle, but I still had a really good time reading. It, and I definitely would recommend it. The 7-Year Slip, though, is definitely my favorite of the two. And then I also read Ninth House, which is a dark academia fantasy kind of thing, which takes place at Yale. Our main character has like this specific ability that is why she got accepted there, and you're basically going through like Yale secret societies. It's definitely a little bit on the magical realism side. It is very dark, so definitely check your trigger warnings before you go into this. The first half for me felt very slow, but the second half definitely picked up, and I really ended up liking the main character. Again though, definitely check trigger warnings because it's a little bit intense. And so the next two I'm just going to talk about together because they're part of the same series. I read Ricochet and Addicted For Now. I gave Ricochet a 4 stars and Addicted For Now like a 4.25. They follow Lily and Lo. Lily is a sex addict, Lo is an alcoholic, and basically the first book in the series, which is Addicted to You, they're like at the height of their addictions. Over the course of these two books, they're kind of getting better in dealing with them and stopping like enabling each other, which I definitely preferred over the first one. They weren't my absolute favorite of the series. I've read a couple after that were just in the beginning of November, and I definitely prefer the other couples in the series more, so that's why it's not any higher than that. But these books are honestly so easy to get through, so if that's what you're looking for, and if you've heard anything about the Addicted series and you're interested, I definitely would recommend. But again, I do prefer the other couples, which are Rose and Connor and Daisy and Reich, a little bit more, just because of like we didn't have any of those initial issues with their relationship, and they don't have to work as hard. But I mean, that's just like a personal thing. I know a lot of people do love Lily and Lo. Another fantasy book that I've read this month was One Dark Window. I gave this one like a 3.5. I honestly haven't thought about it at all since reading it, so that kind of says a little something. I did end up liking it the more I got into it, but I did find it kind of hard to get into, especially in the beginning. It is a gothic fantasy, so I really did like the dark fairy tale aspect of it. Like, I don't know how to describe the vibes of it necessarily other than gothic and dark, but I do think that if you have any idea like what that means, you can kind of picture it well, and it very much falls under that category. I decently like the romance in it. Obviously it is a duology, so it might develop a lot more in the second one. I'm not sure. I do have it, and I potentially plan on reading it this month or next. I'm not totally sure, but yeah, it was a good fantasy. I'd recommend it, but it definitely wasn't at all like one of my favorites. Oh, and then also at the very beginning of this month, and I only read like the last half of it or last 100 pages, I can't even remember, during the month of October. I started it in September and kind of took a while to read it, and that was Morningstar, which is the 3rd book in the Red Rising trilogy, which I absolutely love. If you've seen any of my other videos before, I've kind of raved about this series so many times, so I'm not gonna get too into it. It is a sci-fi. You're following your main character Darrow. People kind of describe it like a Hunger Games and Game of Thrones-esque type of book, which I definitely agree with. So if you like those books, shows, I would recommend this one because there is a lot of like war games, things like that. I absolutely love Pierce Brown's writing and just kind of seeing how his brain works through his writing. That is one of my favorite aspects of these books, and I think I gave it like a 4.5 because it is a series. Like, I kind of lump them all together, and I do think about the series quite a lot, so I would absolutely recommend. And if you're scared of sci-fi, please try this series out, especially the first one. It's not at all like super difficult or hard to comprehend, so if that's what you're worried about, just kind of go into it like you would with any other fantasy. You know, expect a little bit of world building, but genuinely it's not that hard to get into. I read the entire Once Upon a Broken Heart, A Ballad of Never After, and A Curse for True Love like in a few days, and I did actually end that last one on, I think, October 31st. That was my Halloween. I had like a full day of classes, so I didn't do anything crazy. But I absolutely loved that trilogy. I think I gave the first book a 4.5, the second book a 5, and then the last book in my upcoming reading vlog, you'll see I did say it was a 5, but because I read them back to back, I think I was still kind of like riding the high of A Ballad of Never After, and kind of since thinking about it, I think I'm gonna lower A Curse for True Love to a 4.5. I did really like it, but there were things that I felt were maybe missing or I wished were in it, and because of that, I can't give it a 5 stars, but I still would absolutely recommend, and I do hope to reread it at some point. And then the last book, which is the one I listened to on Audible, was House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. I gave that one like a 4.5, I think also. It's definitely a little bit more intimidating than some of her other books. There are so many different characters and just types of characters, and I did really like it. Maybe not quite as much as ACOTAR and Throne of Glass, but again, I have read those series to completion, so I don't think it's necessarily comparable, but I did really like it. And again, if you're scared of the world building in that, don't be. It's actually not that bad, and honestly, even if you don't understand what's going on or the characters for the first 50 pages or so, just keep going, because I promise you'll start to just understand it the more you get into it, because I was lost a little bit in the beginning. Okay, so my camera died, so I'm just gonna record this on this other camera that I have, which is not meant for videos, so hopefully you guys can still hear me decently well. But I was trying to say, if you don't understand it in the beginning, just keep reading. It does get a lot easier to read. I don't remember if I said it, but I did give it like a 4.5. I still really did like it. I liked the mystery aspect of it. I liked our main character and a lot of the other characters, but I do think that I will probably like it more once there's more books out and then I've read the rest of them. I have since finished the second Crescent City, and if you know, you know. Oh, like, by the way, I fell on my scooter. But anyways, since my camera has since died, I'm just gonna wrap this video here. I hope you guys liked it. Let me know if you have read any of these books or planning on them. I would love to hear your thoughts. I think I had a pretty decent reading month. Obviously, not all of them can end up being favorites, but a lot of them were, so that's always exciting. And yeah, so I think that's gonna wrap up this video, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Missing someone.